Welcome back to the garden here in Neath, South Wales. Well, it's almost December, it's grey, it's raining, and probably not the time that you were thinking about a tropical style garden. But are you planning for next season? Well, if so, I'm going to take you around and show you some of the things that I've learned along the way. I'm no expert by any means, but I have learned quite a lot from other gardeners on YouTube, and also some of the failures that I've made and some mistakes too. So let's take a look around the garden. So our garden is in South Wales in the UK, and it's quite mild here really, so we're quite lucky with the weather. Now when I started the garden, I had a completely empty space and I wanted something that I could walk through the planting. And I think after 4 years, I finally achieved what I wanted to do. But none of this garden was actually planned. Both my husband and myself have worked really hard doing it section by section, and it's taken 4 to 5 years now to finally achieve this, but I'm so glad with what we have achieved in that time. So we have been in the house now for 20 years, and this garden was just an empty open space. So it's probably not the best time of year now to be showing it to you, as all the bananas have been put away now and they're all wrapped up for the winter. But there's plenty of planting here, and we're really happy with how it's turned out. Now I knew when I started the garden that I wanted something that looked good for 12 months of the year. So by planting loads of hardy evergreens, I've managed to achieve this. But there's also been some things that I have learned along the way. So I think the first thing to do if you are planning a tropical style garden in the UK is to find out where the sunshine and where the shade is in your garden. Now I know that this part of the garden here is my shady area. So under here I've got my hellebores, some ferns, and also this is where the wildlife pond is, and all the plants here do exceptionally well. So there's also a camellia here, and just tucked behind there at the back of this border is a lovely Fatsia spider's web. So the first mistake that I made when I started this tropical style garden was just buying really for the sake of it, and I didn't really put in any thought of where I was going to put the plants. I just kept on coming back with carfuls of new plants, and this central part of the garden was completely congested and it was totally overgrown. Now I like a jungle garden as much as the next person, but I do think that there's got to be a little bit of space in between the plants just to appreciate their beauty. It's also important to get in place, first of all, the backbone of the garden. And these are the hardy evergreens that are going to stay looking good for 12 months of the year. And these include the plants like the Trachycarpus virginii, and I've got quite a few of these in the garden. And these do look spectacular right through the season and beyond. They look absolutely beautiful, no matter what the season. So as well as all the palms I've got in the garden, you also can't go wrong with the phormiums. There's loads of different types of phormiums. This is a phormium yellow wave. Beautiful plants. And also, what people tend to forget is what I class as the bog standard plants. And these are things like the Photinia red robin. Now these add beauty through the season. They're green at the moment, but this plant will give us some lovely red foliage in the springtime, just on the tips. And they look absolutely spectacular in the garden. So don't be put off by buying the ordinary plants. So one of the main things that I wish I'd spent a bit of time on was really putting more of the plants into where they really would flourish. Now this rhododendron, it's a variegated rhododendron. Beautiful, and it comes out in lovely purple flowers. But when I planted this a few years ago, I made the mistake of planting it in the middle of the garden, but it was getting far too much sunshine. And the lovely buds that you see now, these just weren't forming at all where the plant was. So it did have to be dug up and moved. And it's now in a lovely position in partial shade against the wall for protection. And since I've moved it, it's absolutely thriving in the garden. So don't be afraid to put your plants in the correct places if they're not already. Most of them will tolerate being dug up, as long as it's the correct time of year, and they will thank you for it. This plant is now full of buds, all ready for the springtime, and I just can't wait to see this covered in purple flowers again. So I also have some beds here that are in partial shade, and these get sunshine sort of in the early morning and then shade in the afternoon. So this is where I have my tree fern, some nandinas and some underplanting, and these do exceptionally well in this shadier part of the garden in the afternoon. So So there's plenty of other photinias in the garden, including this Photinia Louise. And that plant does look lovely with its edging of pale pink. And we've also got another good evergreen here, which is the crunchy Photinia. Beautiful leaves on that. And just look at those. Wonderful plant, and that was the latest addition that we've added into the garden this year. Another hardy evergreen for me is the Fatsia japonica. Lots of different varieties. This is the usual variety and they always do well. This one just behind the wildlife pond is the polycarpa. And I do love the leaves on that with their long fingers. Absolutely stunning plant. Now I've also got a lot of the cordylines in the garden. This is a cordyline indivisa, and this, if I walk backwards, was planted out only last year, and it started off as quite a small plant. And this plant now is about 9 foot high and about 6 foot across. And just look at the beautiful orange colour in there on the leaves. It's a beautiful plant. And in here is also quite shady behind there. So I've got planted in there the spider's web. So when I started gardening 4 or 5 years ago, this garden was a complete empty canvas. So everything that I learnt about gardening was found out on YouTube by looking at other people's gardens and seeing what they had done. And one of the biggest inspirations for my garden was George's jungle garden. And as soon as I'd seen his garden, I thought, I want a garden like that. And that's how it all started, with the love of these plants. Now his channel is absolutely amazing, so if you haven't seen it, then please take a look at George's garden. What an inspiration to us all when we're starting out. So this palm tree here is a waggy, a Trachycarpus waggy. Beautiful stiff leaves, and they really will take the wind really well if you have a windier garden. These will be a lot better for you than the Photinia, as the Photinia are much softer leaves and they tend to look a bit straggly. We're quite lucky here in this garden that it's quite enclosed, so all of the planting here really is well protected. So with the tree ferns, I do put a little bit of fleece in the top for the winter months, and sometimes I do wrap the top as well, but it tends to be quite mild. And it's only really the tree ferns, the bananas, and I have got a cycas in the garden, and they're the only plants really that I tend to protect. Everything else is just left alone to do its own thing, and we've always been lucky. So I've also got a wrapped up tree fern here, and I know that this being in the centre of the garden isn't really the best position, as it will get a little bit more sun than I'd like it to get really, but fingers crossed it'll do okay. So the grasses in my garden now are coming to the end of the season. This is an Arundodonus. Absolutely beautiful grass, grows to a fantastic height in the garden. But I think one of the mistakes that I made is planting it really somewhere where it hasn't got an awful lot of space to spread. So the clump has grown quite large over the 3 years, but it's not really the ideal position for this. But if I do want to move it at a later date, that's no problem, but it'll have to be done at the right time of year. I've also made that mistake too, of moving plants when it's not really the best time. And there's also a miscanthus there. And these should ideally be moved in the spring, when they've been cut back and they're just starting to put on a new bit of growth for the season. Now, other things that I've learned along the way, including how I feed the garden. I used to use just plain ordinary Miracle-Gro, and if you have good success with that, then great, stick with it. But I've since learnt that feeding the soil is so beneficial for the garden. Adding a good mulch into the garden during the winter months is also beneficial for feeding the soil. And during the summer, I use plenty of liquid seaweed and chicken manure pellets. The chicken manure pellets I give the plants about twice a season, once during the middle and at the beginning. And that helps just to feed the soil. And for good growth on my tree ferns, during the summer months, I do use a half-strength Tomerite. And that seems to work wonders and gives plenty of growth to the fronds. So I've woken up today and it's actually a little bit of sunshine and it's quite dry, which is typical. I got absolutely soaked yesterday doing a video and I could have done it today. But never mind. But at least now you can see a little bit more of the planting in the dry. Some of the filler plants now that I use, like this Persicaria, this is definitely dying back now, but this will spring back next year without any problems. And to be honest, there's so much interest going on in the garden now that you don't even notice. So in summary, what exactly have I learned when planting this garden? Well, the first thing, make sure that the plants are in the correct location for their needs. So shadier areas for the hostas and the ferns and the rhododendrons and the salvias and the dahlias prefer the much sunnier positions. Secondly, don't overplant when you're starting your garden, as it will just look too busy and too messy. Let the plants be able to be shown in the garden where you can appreciate each individual plant. Thirdly, just make sure that you have a good backbone of hardy evergreens that you can rely on throughout the winter months. So the garden will always look good, no matter what month it is. And looking at the garden, you would never think that it was actually almost December at the moment. It's still full of life and plenty of green colour. So thank you so much for having a little look around the garden with me today and letting me show some of the insights that I've learnt over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, I hadn't even picked up a spade before. So if I can do it, so can you. So follow your dreams. You don't have to be a professional to start gardening, and just enjoy the process of the transformation. We've enjoyed every minute of doing this garden, and we love spending time in the beautiful space that we've created. Also, if you haven't already, please like, comment and subscribe, as only half of my viewers seem to be subscribed to the channel, and we really would love the channel to grow, and we would love to hit the 2,000 subscribers. So until next time, I'll see you all soon, and bye for now.